Welcome to C. Waldman Banjos. I'm going to walk you through a building of a banjo from start to finish. As we come in the shop, you can see where I keep the large stock that I buy, which is usually 8/4. This is cherry, and we'll use that to make the necks and some of the rim. I have another piece of 8/4 here that I bought because it felt nice and dense, probably from the trunk of the tree. It did have some defects, but I've marked it in between these. I'll have just enough for a neck so I can cut this out, book match it, and have opposing grain. So we've cut this piece out of that 2x6 that had knots on either end, so I've selected the piece in between those with nice clear wood. And even more, then the next step was to look along the edge grain and find some nice straight grain here. We're starting to get a little cross grain, or we call run out. And I need a 36-inch piece to make to bend to make the outer ply of the rim. So I found, so I'm going to slice off or resaw a piece off this and use the part that has no run out, the good grain. Now I'll end up with a board like this I can bend. Just for reference, this is the plan for this that I make for each banjo. This is for an 11-inch model with a 25.5-inch scale, so it tells me that the size, the length of the neck blank and other specs I can use. It's my shop drawing. So I moved to the bandsaw here, and it's going to be noisy. Already started a cut. Once I finish that, this will go through the thickness planer and a thickness sander to end up with a very accurately sized ply for the rim. Desawing this stock for the neck and outer ply, I roughly band sawed it, and this piece was then thickness planed and sanded down to 165 thousandths, which is for the outer ply of the rim, and it will match the grain of the neck. So that's one reason for doing that. Plus, I don't need that much thickness for the neck. Now the long piece for the neck, I cut in half, and now I can book match it just like closing a book. And now we have just the grain we like at the end. For this will be the top. And so when we cut the profile of the neck like this, in the finished version, it'll have nice quarter sawn or edge grain, which is the good looking stuff. And this will even have some a little bit of figure in it, which you probably can't see at the camera, but there's a hint of some wavy grain here, which will give some additional beauty to the wood. Most importantly, it's good solid wood, opposing grains, angles of the grain gives strength to the neck. So we have all the wood prepped for this banjo. I'm going to start with the fingerboard is ebony, which comes in a blank. I've sanded it, thickness sanded it, cut the fret slots, which there are 17. There will be a 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch carbon fiber truss rod underneath that. These two pieces are manzanita, local wood. This will be the back strap behind the peg head. This will be the peg head overlay. These pieces of manzanita are cut out to make an octagon, which will be glued to the bottom edge of the rim, and then sawn and trim routed to make a rim cap. These pieces are bubinga. They will also make an octagon. This will be the top edge, and beveled to make a tone rim. Bubinga is a lot like rosewood in its tonal characteristics, a nice bright sound. this banjo will be designed to play with steel strings and gut strings. This banjo will have three-ply rim. They can be 1 or 2 ply. This will end up just under a ½ inch thick rim. I've already sanded a half of the scarf joints, and after soaking, steaming, and bending, the other half of the scarf joint will be formed, and then they will be glued. This will be the dowel stick. I prepared the neck from the long piece of wood we cut out of the 2x6. I've used a jig to cut a taper, which will be the heel surface, and this sets, and then cut at 90 degrees here. At 90 degrees, it will, this taper will determine the downward slope of the neck. I've created a center stripe, and also while the neck is in 2 pieces, I've routed each half of the mortise for the dowel stick. This way it's a square mortise and tenon joint, which I think is superior to a round dowel stick joint, which I found that it does fail. In addition, so when it's all together, you can see the square mortise. In addition, when after the dowel stick is glued in, I will lock it in with another dowel through here before I put the little heel cap on. So this is all the wood that's needed. The next step will be to soak these and steam them, and that will be the section of bending the plies. See you then. Bending the 3rd ply now of this rim. The other 2 are done. First they were soaked in this pipe for several hours, and I actually warmed the water this time. And the first 2 have bent pretty well, so I think the warmer soaking water is a good idea. But now they've steamed for about 2 hours. Have to retrieve it. Here. It's a wallpaper steamer. We'll take it inside. I have a bending mold covered with a heating pad I got from Luthier Mercantile. That's heated up to 500 degrees. This is sort of a rolling mill, which I find works better than just bending. This little covering with stainless steel holds the heat in and takes some stresses off. So now I just hold it down and just without letting it come off the mold, just roll it around really slowly, just sort of break the ice a little, just sort of gradually loosen up the fibers. So this first bend is not really a bend. I'm just barely loosening the fibers up in the wood, just real slowly, just a little bit of a radius, going on just a little bit around, inch or 2 at the most. And that helps loosen it up. The next pass will be more of a bend. We'll take it up. In the first 3 minutes of bending, I just went through the board with a slate, just take the edge off, to just gradually. Then now I've gone over the rest, finished bending the rest of the board now, and I'll finish doing that to the last half here. Then we'll put it in the mold. So I'm just rolling it around, keeping it, rather than bending over your knee, so to speak, and breaking it. It's a rolling action around, keeping it right on the mold. I find that works best. So almost at the end here. I don't know how much force I'm applying, but I'm not, you know, that strong. So, again, when you're bending a 2-ply rim or a 1-ply rim, which is closer to, you know, 22 thousandths or 220 thousandths, 225 thousandths, it takes a little more, it goes a little slower and it's a little harder. This is just 160 thousandths, so it's going well. Just about done here. Just going to hold it down a little bit. We are done. Okay. It goes in, say, goes in the mold. Good. Take it out. I'm going to clamp it just a minute. I'm going to adjust the length so we can. We'll pick back up in a second here. Okay, I just shortened it so it didn't overlap here at the end. So it's in the mold, nice clean bend. I like it. Just going to put the clamping cauls in here, which are slightly curved. Yeah. Have lots of these. Lots of clamps. So clamp this in, and if we just go over here. Here are the first 2 plies in the mold's clamp, sitting over an old oil heater, which will help them dry over the next 2 to 3 days. And it's coming. It's almost winter now, so I might let these dry for 3 days before I start gluing them. And we'll pick back up there. This next step is to shape the end of the heel blank to fit the rim exactly. I want a good fit there. So I've removed some of the wood where the tension hoop will go, so I don't have to shape that. Again, after the blank was glued together, I've re-squared it with a saw and cleaned up this angle at the bottom. And this will be level with the bottom of the rim, so that will give the slope or the drop in the neck. So everything now is based on a vertical spindle sander based on the level bottom of the rim. I've made a jig to do this. This will be set at the 11-inch diameter rim setting, and I've already adjusted the arm to fit, so this center line of the stock will be on the center line of the spindle, and I can adjust this arm back and forth to do that. So I need to clamp it in. Put some clamps here, and make sure that it's level against the bottom. Okay. Turn on the dust collecting system. Turn the spindle on. And I run it through slowly. Turn it off, bring it back. Advance it a little bit. Makes a nice, precise fit at the neck to the rim. I know there's debate about this, but I think a good fit is always a good idea and possibly contributes to the sound of the instrument. I don't know if anybody knows that for a fact, but I still believe in good joinery. Multiple passes, taking out small amounts of material will give you the best result. So this is the rim. Now that it's all three plies have been glued and it's clamped overnight, we're ready to take the clamps off and start preparing the top and bottom edges for to receive the tone rim, which is out of bubinga, and a rim cap, which will be out of the manzanita. So updating the progress of the neck here. Again, we've glued the two halves, as mentioned. I've cut away the roughed out profile and glued this veneer of manzanita on the back as a back strap. This is decorative, plus it reinforces the part of the neck at the nut, which is potentially a weak spot. I've used double-sided tape to put these sleds, or these wedges on the surface of the neck, and so when I route this groove for the truss rod, which is carbon fiber, it will get deeper down at the heel end. So it starts out the deepest where the wedge is the thinnest, and then it gets more shallow as I've routed it along, come up. Again, I applied these sleds with double-sided tape, which I'm now, in removing the sleds, you can see it's left in with a nice slot here to put the 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch deep carbon fiber truss rod. Then I fill the gap with a scrap of ebony fretboard material, and then we'll glue that in place. So now I'll have the truss rod is now at this kind of angle, so it's formed this triangle, and so it has the strength of the triangle plus the strength of the rod itself, and gives a much more stable neck. So next step, I'll glue that in. So updating on the rim, the three plies are now glued together. I've taken them out, I've driven them out of the mold. I've planed and sanded the top surface, scribed the bottom surface, and used the table saw to level it, and then sanded it smooth so it's the right thickness. This one happens to be 2.6 inches deep. At the tailpiece joint of the plies, I like to put a little tailpiece, a little wedge, much like a guitar has at the tailpiece end. To do that, I use this jig. It's slightly tapered. It's that 1 degree taper, and I'll clamp it in place, and then use a trim router with the top bearing, which will route a triangular recess, which I put a piece of either ebony or manzanita or any accent wood to finish that up. Once those are trimmed on the glued and trimmed top and bottom, then I can apply the pieces that will become the tone rim. This is bubinga. This will be traced and cut on the outside of the bandsaw, roughed out on the inside of the jigsaw, because you remove the blade, and glued and then trim routed flush. And the bottom edge will have this rim cap of manzanita, the same procedure. At that point, I'll be ready to start fitting the neck to the rim and drilling some tone chamber holes and things like that. I glued the octagonal pieces on that were jigsawed roughly to the center scribe and bandsawed on the outside, glued. There's this extra that has to be trim routed off right in here. Rather than using a lathe, I can do things with this router table. Because the grain is up and down, it's like routing the edges of a guitar topper back. You have to go up and down grain. So now we'll have a rim blank with nice flush tone rim. This is bubinga on the top and manzanita on the bottom. Next step will be drilling holes. I'm going to shape the peg head now. I've drilled the holes for the pegs. I've roughly bandsawed the waist out, and I'm keeping it all vertical by using a scrap that was off the top of the fingerboard. Brings everything back to vertical. So I can use this upside down and keep all the angles right, and pretty much freehand it, but it's the spindle sander really helps. So around the top here, it's the idea that it keeps the angles right and consistent and gives us a nice shape. Okay, we're going to start shaping the neck, and just to catch up, I've fitted the neck to the rim, and I'm using a wedge through a square mortise instead of a U-bolt, as this is a sort of a hybrid banjo to the mid-19th century. So that comes out. We'll set that aside, and now I shape the necks by hand instead of a machine carving. So I've devised a set of templates to use. This will be the first shaping will be based on this one. I'll take off from this line down to the edge of the fingerboard, so I can remove a lot of this material without worrying about taking too much. I know exactly how much to take off, so I can use some big tools that we'll see over here. So the tools that I'll use for the first steps are things that can remove material quickly. A big Stanley Surfoam, a big, not quite a rasp, but a rough file, and then the good old trusty spoke shave. A couple strokes to see, which way the grain can. Looks like I'm going to have to pull it. Might be better. The wood has a little bit of figure in it, so I'll have to work with that. Again, at this point, I'm taking off from this edge of the fingerboard down to this line, so I'm not worried about. I can just carve away here and not be concerned about a rough cut or taking too much material at this point. When I get around to I can use this, looks like a big farrier's tool almost, take it around the curve there. As I get down to the next, closer to the shaping cuts, I'll use a finer tools, and we'll see that later. Okay, I have the first amount of wood removed based on the first template, and then I will turn this from two-sided into three-sided by using these narrower templates, draw some lines, and then remove the material between the lines. And so I know how much I'm taking off each time, so when I get around to doing it by eye at the end, it will come out more consistently. And now I'm also starting to use not so aggressive tools. Back to my old spoke shave, which is a wonderful tool. You always have to find out which way the grain wants you to plane. So there's that. I'm still using these large files. I'm also starting to use the old hand scraper, which is a wonderful old tool. It's not much different than the Neolithic flake for scraping skins and what have you. It's just made out of steel. And you can make nice. And this is how I've finished off each step. But it makes nice curves, and is a wonderful throwback to the ancient lutherie, which is what I'm trying to do, making the necks myself rather than with a machine or a computerized carving machine. Well, since the last time, I finished carving the neck with shape sanding boards, hand scrapers, sanding it to finish shape. Have a base coat of shellac and two coats of rubbed on poly and 3 or 4 coats on the peg head, as it needed a little bit more. While that was drying, I did the same finish to the rim and assembled it. Added the brackets and attached the head, and over the last day or so it's been getting up to tension. So now we just need to fit the neck to the rim like this. This wedge of manzanita fits in there. This doesn't have a through dowel stick, as you would often have with a banjo with a wedge dowel stick. That'd be sort of in period, but I'm having a screw-on one, so I can use a different tailpiece if I want. And this one I'm going to use this carved manzanita tailpiece that has recesses on the back for either a tail gut or, in this case, a copper wire. So the next step before I actually attach it permanently, I'll polish the neck and add the Goto tuners, a 5th string, can't see that, but a 5th string nut, and shape the nut at the peg head. Then I'll be ready to string it up and play it for you. See you then. So this is the finish of Banjo number 102, 11-inch chromatic model. A little bit of a hybrid, if you remember. I had the dowel stick is wedged. It's not a through dowel stick. It's a carved manzanita tailpiece, some figured cherry, which I didn't really expect when I bought it, but it came out nice. There was some manzanita on the peg head and back strap, Goto tuners, ebony fingerboard with Evo, that's EVO frets. There's a buried carbon fiber truss rod. That's 12 hooks, and slightly thinner than my usual tension hoop that I built. It's 1/8 inch thick rather than 3/16. And I think I like the sound of it. I'm going to deliver it tomorrow. It's been assembled for just under a week now, and the sound is just starting to develop into what I like as a clear rich tone. Thank you.